Welcome to the Brave Woman at Work podcast. This is your host, Jen Pastikas. I'm so glad you're here. With the Brave Woman at Work podcast, you'll get the resources and tips along with real-world stories and humor to empower and inspire you to take bolder and braver actions in your career and life. Welcome to the Brave Women at Work podcast. This is your host, Jen Pastikas. I'm so glad you're here. Well, hey everyone, how are you doing out there? So when we grow up, we think we have it all figured out, don't we? At least I think that at least 12, 13, between 12 and 18, I thought I had it all figured out. We believe that we should go to college if that's what, we grew up believing, or maybe we just wanted to go to college. We wanted to get a good job. We thought that we had to find our perfect partner, in air quotes, be fit or healthy, have a good circle of friends. Maybe we wanted kids. And we wanted it all before the age of 35, because as my 13-year-old daughter says, anything over the age of 40 is old. So I must be ancient. So we have these insane expectations for ourselves and what our lives will, and again, air quotes, should be. And then we learn. We get our butt kicked by life. Maybe the job or career path we originally selected isn't right for us. Maybe we find ourselves without a partner or kids. Maybe life faces us with some health challenges, whether small or significant. Whatever it is, life will test our ability to pivot and reinvent ourselves into something entirely new. It's like the Japanese art of Kintsugi. And I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast, as we amass quite the library here at Brave Women at Work. I can't recall, but with Kintsugi, it's a Japanese art form, and artists take these broken pieces of pottery. So if you think of like these beautiful pieces of pottery, and the piece of pottery is completely cracked all over the place. And then they take those pieces of that bowl or that piece and they carefully pour gold into the cracks to put it all back together once again. So the bowls that were once broken are now even more beautiful than before. It's something entirely new and even better than before. And so I would tell you, definitely look it up. Google Kintsugi, so Kintsugi. And again, it's so beautiful because even though it was technically broken, it has been made new. So, with that, I wanted to just share during my conversation with my guest, Nicole Meline, today, I was reminded of the power of reinvention. Nicole and I chatted about why she believes in an unending number of chances and the underdog. So, a girl of my own heart. Nicole's personal journey of reinvention that took her from Columbia and Rutgers to something entirely different in terms of her career path. Why blood and sweat are the doorways to the heart, how spirited leaders have a place in today's work environment, Nicole's Alter podcast and her membership, which is different. It's different than any other health platform that I've ever seen before, and so much more. So here is more about Nicole. Nicole Meline grew up in Southern California, went to college at USC, then started a long journey through grad schools, exploring different versions of teacher, healer, pastor, poet. She then moved to New York City without a job or connections because Nicole wanted to be forged by its energy and ambition. 11 years later, Nicole wrote a love letter to that experience, having studied and taught at Columbia and Rutgers and somehow grown into the reach of it. She then moved to the Mountain West, first Santa Fe and now Boulder, Colorado, where Nicole is out on the trails with her wolf mutt Everest. In classrooms, startup companies, intimate yoga studios, live streams to thousands, and the over 15 altar journey retreats that Nicole has led, she has learned how to hold space that invites each person to show up authentically, honor where they are at, and be open to possibility. How to create a physical or digital room spacious enough for joy, grief, hope, disappointment, and dancing. Yes, all the dancing. Having created a rhythm of practicing courage, navigating the many swerves of 8+ years of entrepreneurship and space holding, Nicole loves to mentor leaders to come into their voice and build an authentic brand and community, consult with companies to refine their vision and deepen team connection, and inspire audiences to create their next chapter. So, if Brave Woman at Work has made any type of impact on your heart, your mind, your soul, your career, your life, please be sure to share it with a family member, a friend, or a colleague. And as you know, the ratings and reviews matter. So, if you can leave a rating and review, I would so appreciate it. And something positive, we actually just reached 38 or 39 countries across the entire globe. So, how amazing is that? That just tickles my heart that we're reaching more and more women in more and more spaces across the world. If you haven't yet downloaded one or all of my freebies from my website, check them out at bravewomanatwork.com. The three freebies are 24 career and leadership affirmations, getting paid 10 negotiation tips, and 5 ways to managing your imposter syndrome. And last but not least, if you haven't heard a podcast lately, I am co-hosting a women's leadership conference, not just a retreat, a conference called Thrive in 25. We also just partnered with our amazing keynote speaker, Erin Gallagher of the Hype Women Movement and podcast. And Erin also has a book of the same name, Hype Women, that is coming out in October of 2025. And she is our keynote speaker and resident badass. She was named as a 2023 Top 100 LinkedIn Creator, Top 10 DEI Voice at number 5, and recognized for the top 100 most influential LinkedIn posts of the decade. I am so pumped to hear her. And this conference is going to be more than a traditional conference. It's going to be a movement, and we're growing our Brave Woman at Work community. So you can learn more about the conference and register at thrive-in25.com. Again, thrive-in25.com. All right, let's welcome Nicole to the show. Well, hello, Nicole. Welcome to Brave Woman at Work. How are you today?
I'm so good. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, of course. So I am so jazzed to talk with you today. So tell me a little bit about you and your background story and how you've gotten to where you are.
Yeah, so I have had a pretty multi-passionate professional life. I think a multi-passionate path of training. And I love, especially, I think, working with women who are trying to bring together some disparate strands, maybe that don't seem to kind of fit as logically or as linearly. I, when I was growing up in Southern California, I think, first of all, I've always kind of had a sense of the divine and very much a curiosity about spirituality. And and I also was kind of also had a sense of myself as a leader. And I grew up in a context, in a very conservative, evangelical, Orange County, California context, where
Mm,
I didn't see many people, many women in leadership. The little world that I was growing up in
mm,
didn't really take women's voices seriously and honor women in leadership. So I didn't see many examples of that. I kind of had this sense of myself as a healer, like I said, like some kind of a spiritual leader, although I didn't see many examples of that, many other women doing that in a way that called to me. And so I headed down a track towards becoming a doctor, doing an MD. So I went to USC for college and was pre-med and was aiming towards medical school and applied several times. And one of the gifts of my life, one of the gifts of my story has been not fitting into or not being accepted into like the conventional track, or maybe getting
mm,
into it for a certain amount of time and realizing that I want to do things in a broader way. Like I want to do things in a way that's bigger than this particular container. So I, of course, like took several years to kind of metabolize the heartbreak and feel that sense of lostness. I came super close to getting to medical school. I got interviews, I got waitlisted, and it was like almost, but not quite. But to the point where like the universe was telling me this is not the path. And I
mm,
really had, I felt I started teaching high school right after that point, and I loved teaching. I loved teaching. Loved speaking. I loved the leadership role of it. I loved inspiring kids at that time to really, discover their essence, like come into themselves and really find their voice. I was teaching literature. And so that set me on a different path towards academia. And I first went through seminary, did a couple of master's degrees in
Wow,
theology.
you really have been all over the
Yeah,
place.
all over the
Okay.
place.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I'm like, okay, I didn't know about the seminary. I'm like, I'm stuck now. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, like very much what I was saying about all these disparate rabbit trails. But yeah, so did a couple of master's degrees there and also got a lot of training in counseling, pastoral work, right? And leading spiritual communities. And so, but it was really the academy at that point, which is where I felt like I ultimately wanted to go. So I did a couple of master's degrees in English literature on the way towards a PhD in English lit. And along the way, I had moved to New York City. I needed a job. And so I started teaching fitness. Fitness had always been this kind of like through line in my life. Although I didn't think of myself as an athlete, I didn't do like kind of team sports as a kid. And it was really in college, I definitely put on the freshman 15. And, I started running in college because it was just the easiest thing to do. I could do it at night, I could do it at any time, just throw on my running shoes. And I started, not only did I like fall in love with running, but I realized that it was when I was running that I started to think more bravely about my life. Like I would have
Mm,
these kind of bigger dreams while I was running. And I think a big part of it is I got this sense of my strength, right? Like I was tapped into my strength.
mm.
And that really stuck with me, like that experience and passing that on to other people. So when I started teaching fitness in New York just as a side job, that it was really fun to build and grow a toolbox of leading people in fitness and in movement, especially in a way that's like has bigger vision behind it than just burning calories,
Yes.
losing
Yes.
inches, building muscle, all of that. Like for a lot of us, that's not a big enough why to keep us consistent in our training. So I really had this realization. I was probably about 10 years older than most of the people in my PhD program. So I was a lot more connected to the like economic realities of what this, road was going to look like. And I just kind of had this realization, wow, in fitness, I was just starting with Peloton as they were starting. I'm doing all these things that I love to do, but just in this unexpected container, right? So
Mm.
I made the huge decision to drop out of a fellowship, fully funded PhD program a couple years in, and to just go all out. And so I got to be a part of really experiencing that startup culture for better and for worse, like both the chaos of it and the possibility of it at Peloton, and then ultimately left to start my own platform and my own brand, which has included one-on-one work with people, coaching and retreats and courses. And then really the heart of it is a platform called Alter, which is soulful fitness and meditation that, like I was saying a minute ago, is really ultimately about having this daily check-in with ourselves, this daily realignment and plugging into our power, you know, and burning calories and building muscle and all of that,
Doing
but
all the
having,
things.
yeah,
Yeah.
having this bigger why behind it.
So, okay, so you obviously are pretty brave, like you said, and pretty fearless, but the names that you were a founding instructor at Peloton, and then you didn't mention, but that you were a professor at Columbia and at Rutgers. I mean, these aren't like just like small colleges. So like what was there like a moment? Was there like a point? Because you may have in your mind at one point said, you know what, I made it, right? Like I've meandered around and I've like found my way and now I'm, a professor. I'm in a PhD program and I'm, working a Peloton or I'm doing exercise on the side. There is got to be some sort of like prompting moment or maybe some signal in your body or something happened where you were brave enough to walk away from all that and found your own business. Do you remember that moment? Like what was happening with you then?
That's such a good question. I would say that moment happened. both in the approach and in the departure. In all of these, I've gone to some big name schools and worked at some big name companies. And at every single one of those moments of approaching those places or starting to dream about those places, I was not qualified, or I did not come from like a network of connections. And
Mm-hmm.
so all of those, like with Columbia, there were a couple of professors there I really wanted to work with, and ultimately I wanted to be in their PhD program, which is like 0.0001% of applicants that they take. But I applied and I got into their master's program, right? And so I kind of like started on that lower level, and I 100% made the most of being there. Like I just took every single class that I could and asked for things. That was, I think, a big learning experience of ask for the things you want, which we're often so
Mm.
terrified to do. A very much pivot moment in my life was when I was auditioning to be a spin instructor in New York City for the first time. I'd probably been in the city about a year. I mean, the city is so intimidating, so exciting,
Mm-hmm.
and so intimidating. It'll just, remind you of how small you are all the time. And I was auditioning at New York Sports Club, which is kind of like the 24-hour fitness, or just like, it's like the entry level big box gym. It's not
Okay.
like some incredible boutique brand or anything. In other words, if I can't get in there, I can't get in anywhere.
Okay.
So, I auditioned. I did the first audition. They did not hire me. The next audition was a month later. They did not hire me after that second audition. But every
Oh man.
time I went to and this took so much like grit and just kind of like having to lay aside my pride and like really honor. I had this little voice inside of me that said, I think I'm going to be really good at this. But yet, evidence to the contrary, right? I'm not getting hired. And I remember a friend of mine at the time, after that second audition, seeing how hard I was working for this. And I was taking all these classes and learning things. And he said, like maybe this just isn't for you, and that's okay. And I knew like there was that, which is sometimes true, right? That's sometimes the
Of
right
course.
question, totally. But I had this little voice inside of me that was like, no, I think this is for me. And I just have to keep going. And so I went and I auditioned that third time. And finally I was hired, to start subbing. But and
But it
that
was
was,
a
I mean,
win. It was a
it was a
win.
win. And that, I mean, if not for that moment, I wouldn't, of course, not have been to Peloton, not, the other like amazing boutique brands that I worked with along the way. And so I point to that because I think that like that's really my passion, is helping women to connect with that voice. Like that
Mm.
little voice in you that is your kind of feisty, like 10-year-old ish, that's, hasn't yet absorbed a bunch of stories about how you're not qualified or whatever. Like that
Mm.
feisty little voice in you that over time, like it can get a lot harder to hear, and underneath maybe a lot of rejections and stuff. But it was that same voice, when I've had these moments of leaving, like to leave a PhD program, which was, I'd been trying to become a doctor for 20 years, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and so to finally to decide to do that and to say, I've learned so much on this journey, and I'm realizing that this particular container that I was aiming for is not the right one for who I'm becoming, right? Like the woman I'm becoming, the way that I want to teach is a bit bigger and wilder than this particular container. And that took, a lot of courage
Mm-hmm.
to decide that. And similarly, like to create my own platform and to launch that. And again, it kind of comes back to that little voice, which is when I talk about spirituality or spirited leadership, which is so much of what I love to work with women in. It's really that, it's like, call it the heart or spirit or intuition, like that voice. And I think especially as women that we have a very refined connection to, that maybe culture has taught us not to honor, especially corporate culture.
Mm-hmm.
Like what does it look like at all the seasons of our lives to kind of clear that channel, right? And to be able to tune into that.
Mm. So beautiful. So one thing that I've noticed, so you said that feisty part of yourself. So I'll just say like a quick anecdotal story. So I have a 6-year-old, I have a 13-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old daughter. And my 6-year-old is like trying to well, she's trying to ride her bike and also trying to roller skate. So we've got everything on wheels right now, like happening. Like it's like had a couple 60, degree days in Chicago, and like everybody's out washing their car, like in shorts, like it's just like everyone's so excited about spring because it gets cold here, although we had a mild winter. And like it's the cliche, right? Like she was terrified to like go on her roller skates and she's like holding my hand and then, like she falls, but she's got that like grit, like to get up and be like, yeah, again, again, again. Like there's no one that's like telling her, I'm not being like, oh, don't do it. I'm like, get up, like, let's try again. She's like, yeah, let's go again. Right. And that's what you're talking about is that you're like, okay, I'm not going to get it. I didn't get it this time. I'm going to go again. I'm going to go again. So somewhere, as you know, that gets beat out of us. Maybe life is just really tough, or work is really tough, or people say we can't, or they give us outs. Like your friend didn't mean that. Like your friend was trying to
Yep,
give you a soft place to land, not to like hurt you,
absolutely.
but you had to listen and go, no, that was right for me. That could have changed the whole trajectory of your life. And so, how did you, because we have a lot of lovingly, I call us perfectionists that listen to this podcast. So, how did you get over that failure or perceived failure? Even like the PhD program also kills me because I'm like, oh my God, like that would be killing me to be walking away from that. So, you've had to make some very tough decisions about walking down one road in your life or your career and being like, nope, nope, nope. And you could have gotten stuck in those like holes to say like, oh, I failed, but it sounds like you didn't, or you found ways around it. So how did you do that?
It's yeah, thank you for that question. There's I we are just generally in our culture, but I think especially for women, we're so conditioned against failure, right? And I'm so struck by that word that you brought up with your daughter, like again, 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 like bring it on, right? And that she views a learning process as inevitably including quote unquote failures, right? I
Correct.
love, of course, the reframe. And I always have to like be very intentional about reframing this because I'm still so conditioned to feel shame at failure.
Mm.
And but the reframe of what if there are no failures? What if there are only lessons? No failures, only lessons, or no failures, only wisdom, right? Like to reframe, let me think about all the things that I learned from this marriage that has, moved into divorce, right? Or let me think about all the things that I learned on this one career track that I've been excused from, or um, that,
That's
and
funny.
yeah, like it's just, we're so conditioned to feel shame at failure, versus really seeing it as almost like I feel like your daughter was seeing it playfully, like,
Oh,
right?
yes.
That just like, yeah, what? Okay, so I fell. So I learned a little bit. I got a little more muscle memory about where my center of gravity is.
Oh yeah,
There's
you
a,
need if you met her, you'd be like, there's a ball of joy walking around in the world.
yeah, there's a mural that I'll never forget seeing this photo. I wish I could remember which company it was in at Silicon Valley. Maybe someone will write in and say, but there was a company where in the office entryway was this huge mural of just a big script, 2 words that just said in big script writing, "Fail better."
Oh, so
there's
beautiful.
yeah, there's a great line by the playwright Samuel Beckett, the Irish playwright. He says, fail more, fail again, fail better. Right. So
Mm.
like it's seeing failure as just this it's just information gathering, right? And we hear like, of course, how many times did Thomas Edison try, before
Of course.
succeeding?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think about other I got to shout out for my Chicagoans like Oprah Winfrey didn't get hired, like Oprah Winfrey people. Then we had Michael Jordan, who I think got cut or didn't get, on his basketball team when he first was in college or somewhere in there. I mean, there's so many examples. If you just Google like, like famous failures, I know that Einstein had so many failures in his life. So just Google that. I think it'd be fun for you as a reframe for anyone that's listening that's struggling with failure right now, that you're like, okay, if Oprah didn't get hired, then like maybe, and she made it,
Right.
I can make it too.
Yeah. And in all of those cases, it really came down to having that deep sense of intuition, right? Like
Yes.
having, and I think it's also an understanding that you can really be made for something and also have a lot to learn, right? Like these
Mm.
things, like you can have incredible raw talent that's still not going to be refined enough yet to be in the role that you want. And that's like, of course, we're human. Like that's just the normal, to have this understanding of we fail our way into success, we fail our way into learning wisdom. And in all those cases, I'm sure like Oprah had to have that moment with herself of like, am I going to keep going? Yeah, because she had the vision of what she was going to become and the voice that she was meant to have.
So I have to ask you, and then I want to go because you have some really interesting terminology, like you said, that breath and sweat are the doorways to the heart. So maybe this is the answer, but so I will share vulnerably that for many years, I mean, women as a whole, like to survive corporate, I'm going to say corporate careers, right? Like we're taught to use our heads and not our hearts very often. So I broke up with my intuitive voice for a long time. We had a breakup for like probably 20 years. And then I found her again and I'm like, oh, okay, there you are. And there was like this like shyness and she was in the corner and I was in the corner for a long time to like make up and stuff. So I guess I was just wondering for those of us that may have broken up with our intuition, really are separated from heart's wisdom. How do we get back in touch? Because it was really
Mm.
challenging for me. It was very, and I'm still in a process of like reconnecting with that because it's so much of an easier path, like path of least resistance. For me, when I have an issue, it always goes to like analytical mind. I'm always like, okay, writing down the pro and cons list. It's like I don't know. It's like beaten into me to be more analytical than to be in my heart center. So I was just curious about how can we find our way back there?
Yeah. And let's just acknowledge too, like the extent to which business culture in our country and still around the world is it's been shaped by the masculine and it is very masculine. I mean, you look at
Yes.
most C-suites of any corporation, you look at who gets venture funding, you look at all of these statistics and it's just so dramatically prizing that masculine energy of structure, of analytics, of data. And I think that any healthy human being has both, right? Like has this
Hmm.
really, we can talk about it in these just kind of broad terms of masculine, feminine energy. And that to be fully like heart-centered, thriving human being, that there's a harmony of both of these ways of thinking, like left brain, right brain,
Hmm.
data, intuition, all of this. So we want to be able to bring both when we're looking at any question, whether it's like a life direction question or a business design question or something like that. But I think that, I mean, I also want to acknowledge that I think that women have there's there's this great, just Google the phrase witch wound and it'll take you down
Which
this,
wound?
yeah,
Okay,
it'll
tell
take
me.
you
I
down
don't know
this
what you're
rabbit
talking
hole.
about right now. Let's go.
It's the whole history of how women's intuition has really been penalized in like all of history, right? So
Huh.
there's, I just say that to acknowledge like there is this huge cultural weight when you're talking about breaking up with your intuition. Like there's a lot of reasons that we've been pressured into to do that. But I think that, I guess, to circle around that phrase, breath and sweater, doorways to the heart, that's something that came to me, even going back to those experiences running in college where as I was reconnecting with my strength and feeling my power, like I started to dream bigger. A strong body dreams bigger, right? We're flooding our
Mm.
when we're moving, like we're flooding our minds with we're flooding our brain with all of this blood and all of this oxygen, right? So unsurprisingly, we think in a different way often when we're moving. And in the altar practice that I lead, I it's a combination of what I call linear movement and nonlinear movement. So linear movement is recognizable training stuff that we all do in the gym: squats, lunges, burpees, weightlifting, right? Strength. So we're doing that. We're doing that structured linear movement, but it feels essential. And I think, especially as women, for us to also give ourselves the chance to move in a nonlinear way. So, something like ecstatic dance, or something like just turning on a song and letting your body move in whatever way it wants to, that it's such a simple thing and it can take 5 minutes and it can be a complete revelation, of like, oh, I love to, when I'm leading that kind of movement, to invite people to check in with their 3-year-old self and their 90-year-old self. Like, how does your 3-year-old self want to invite you to dance or to move? How does your 90-year-old self want to invite you to dance and to move? And that brings us into this kind of primal, very core, very raw place that I think a lot of us, maybe it's been years, since we have been there. But so that's really the heart of the kind of movement practices that I lead is, yeah, we're going to build muscle. We're going to burn calories. We're going to like supercharge our metabolism, but we're also going to get in touch with like the rawest core place.
Okay, so everybody, I have to like back the bus up on ecstatic dance and tell you guys. So there are a lot of women listening who I don't even know in my community what ecstatic dance is. So everyone, it's like basically you play whatever music, right? It's typically, I don't know if it could be anything. And you just no agenda. There are no steps. You just let your body move intuitively. And it can be, and you shut your eyes typically because you don't want to be like judging yourself or judging someone else. And I have to tell you, that was so hard for me. I was just like, I feel so weird.
Yeah.
Like there are no steps, like there's no like pathway. I mean, it's taken me a couple rounds to do ecstatic dance to
I
like
love that
not
you do
judge.
this.
I like not judge myself, but it's the equivalent to me of when you're a kid, like let's go back to my little one, Olivia, like they just like color out of the lines, right? They just like don't care. And so that's what it means to me. I don't know. What do you think about ecstatic dance? Do you feel like it's almost like you're coloring out of the lines and it is completely free form?
Absolutely. And it's so that word ecstatic has the prefix X, right? Exit, like to get outside of. So literally to get outside of the lines, to get outside of your head. It's so totally normal to feel awkward, to feel embarrassed, to feel, what am I supposed to do? Which of course that surfaces how much we're functioning with like shoulds and supposed tos and
Yeah.
all of that, right? But so, and it doesn't, I think that ecstatic dance is this quick, instant way of accessing that place. But just as easily, I mean, you could literally just be coloring outside the lines, be painting, or be doing anything creative in a way where you are completely removing the product of what, this thing is not meant to produce. I'm not going to produce a painting. I'm not going to produce a song. I'm just here to express. I'm just here to check in on my internal weather. I'm here to connect with my intuition. And just to even, for a lot of us, it's like, I'm here to just open up to the possibility that there is intuition. I don't even know, like it's been a long time, right? But one vision that I want to give us all is there are few things as powerful as a woman who has stopped trying to please, right? Who has
Mm.
stopped like having her foremost obsession be what are the rules and let me make sure that I'm playing by them, right? And who's asking herself this other deeper question of what is my essence? Like what does my radiance look like? What are my particular gifts and skills and talents? How can I direct them into this staff meeting, or direct them into this whatever like the work context might be, like and I'll sometimes if I'll like be on the beach, and this will happen rarely, and you'll see a woman who doesn't have like a conventional, bikini body. By the way, how do you have
Mm.
bikini body? You put on a bikini.
Mm.
But I'm saying like
Yes.
when you see a woman who's just like in like she is in her body. She is enjoy. She's dressing in a way that's going to like allow her to feel the wind, allow her to like fully feel. And to a woman who's in her body, like that is, I think, one of the great glories and powers in the universe. And of course, we've been taught, to like train that wildness out of us and to
Mm.
really like play by these rules of structure, and structure 100% has a place. But I like to give this invitation because I think oftentimes just all of the streams of um all these cultural streams can really bring a woman, when she's like 40 plus, 30, 35 plus or something, into this sense of kind of like numbness, diminishment, a sense of like the best is behind me. You know,
Mm.
I'm not going to really keep dreaming or dream as big or whatever. And that's the place that I want to invite us to grow out of. Right.
So this is an interesting anecdote, and then we'll keep on keeping on. I was asked recently by a person, why do you have the side businesses? Like, you have a successful corporate career, and I thought about it. I looked at another woman, and I looked at her, and I go, because it makes me the most dangerous piece on the chessboard. And she was just like, "What do you mean?" I go, because I don't have my worth tied into this corporate place.
Ooh,
My
yes.
worth is coming from a much deeper well. And she just kind of looked at me because she's still like in that and I'm still there too, okay, everybody. I'm just dabbling into ecstatic dance. Let's not like say I'm like way over the other side. But it kind of felt like so empowering because for the longest time it was like about being in the zone. I interviewed another woman, I think it was Susan Goldstein, who has a whole course called The Matrix. And it's like, I'm in the Matrix. I'm like living by everybody's rules. I'm like pleasing everybody because that's what I quote unquote should be doing. And now I'm like just on the verge of like, I'm like, yeah, no, like I'm going to do it my way. And it just really, I hope it helped her to know that you don't have to come from like and connect your worth directly to your work or even directly to your family. I mean, like, yes, all those places like and spaces are a sense of pride, but it's not, like you said, connected always to the output, the work output. What's really cool invitation about this conversation is that many women, a lot of women, like we don't give ourselves permission to color out of the lines or do ecstatic dance or to find that like playful part of us, to tap into heart's wisdom, to none of that. Like it's always like I have this meeting and this meeting and this meeting and this meeting, and then, I'm done and I do it all over again. There is no space, there's no grace for anything outside the lines.
Yes. And I mean, I know what that culture feels like. I have felt it in academia. I've felt it in different companies that I've worked with. And there's, of course, there's something to be said for, and I'm very grateful for a lot of, the time that I've spent on it, like on conventional routes. And
Yes.
and then there's also that moment, of for me, it was like I said, like realizing that I want to create in a way that's not going to fit in some of these conventional versions. And when I was just listening to you, I saw this vision of like what would when we really kind of peel back, I think what just about any company is doing, when we peel back the product or the sales or whatever, it's all about human connection. It's all about belonging, right? It's all about pleasure, right? Like, and when we're creating marketing campaigns or all the different like routes that businesses are going down, right? All of the different
Hmm.
initiatives that businesses are working with as they're working towards that primary goal. I had this vision as you were talking of what if you show up at that meeting in your heart's wisdom? Like,
Mm.
hopefully, we've all had experiences of being in a meeting or being on like what we will think is just going to be a boring Zoom call or something. And someone shows up and disrupts the situation with this moment of human connection or this moment of vulnerability. And
Mm.
this, right, that like resets the energy of the whole thing, like resets the conversation. And so I think that it's making the shift to learn to value that, like to learn to value your when you're connected to your heart's wisdom, when you're connected to spirit as you experience it, and you show up to that meeting in that radiance, in that openness, right? You show up to that presentation like supercharged with this real belief in your own value and belief in your own voice, which is, of course, like it's a journey that we're all on to
Mm-hmm.
heal the trauma around. And like, really, I believe so deeply that we are all full on miracles. Like the fact that each one of us is so utterly unique, and to be able to walk in that value, right? To be able to walk in the worthiness of our voice and the worthiness of our particular energy is, it's the journey that we're all on. But when we show up in that way, I think it can reset everything, right? I mean, not just the meeting, it
Mm.
resets the whole marketing campaign, it resets the whole
Well, it sets
quarterly
the whole
initiative.
environment. Like if
Yeah.
everybody like, and you're like kind of like your work is just like, I'm gonna wave over like one person at a time, right? And so is that like a roundabout way? Is that the definition or your definition of a spirited leader? Is that like what it is? Is they're bringing heart's wisdom, they're bringing spirit as they experience it, they're bringing everything to table, not like, oh, I've got to stay in the lines or this is what I should be doing. So am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, that's absolutely it. I love that the word spirited is a word that's often used about horses, which is,
Hmm.
you didn't see that coming.
No.
And, and the, the image of the relationship between a horse and a rider. So a spirited horse is a horse that has a real sense of self, right? Like has a real sense of direction, knows what they want to do. They're like breaking, they're leaders, right? And I think that the relationship between a horse and a rider is actually this beautiful metaphor of collaborative leadership. It's leadership that like one honors the other, and this thing does not work unless there's like a mutual honoring of each other and a mutual collaboration, and especially with a spirited horse, right? So that's this other. So yes, spirited leadership is spiritual leadership. It's leadership that's honoring our spirit, our intuition, our heart, but also I love that image of it's collaborative, right? It's what does it look like to lead in a way that is honoring that spirit in all of the people that you are leading as well, to kind of lead in a way where there's this mutual bow toward each other.
Oh, wow, that is so beautiful. And we typically talk about word of the year here at Brave Women at Work. So I mean, I know we're recording in March as we're doing it now. We'll see when it launches, but everybody like put that on your short list. The word spirited. That would be a fun word of the year. Like I'm going to be living spirited. I'm going to be working in a spirited way. I'm going to be a spirited leader. So this is new. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've kind of talked around the altar, your altar program. I think it's a membership, and then your podcast. So tell us a little bit more about that. So if someone is looking for a new way, to exercise, a new way to, be a spirited leader, tell us more about, the membership and then your podcast.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah. So the Alter Together membership, you can find out about it at nicolemeline.com/alter. And it's a spirited community. It's yeah, so it's both it's movement and meditation, as well as there's different tiers to the membership. So I offer mentorship at the highest tier as well. And it's movement practices, workouts, strength training, meditations that are all coming from, I mean, I'm pouring into it my deep experience as a four-time Ironman, you know, instructor of many different fitness modalities, yoga, Pilates, indoor cycling, treadmill workouts. So I have all of this structure, right, that I'm bringing to it. But the difference is that I'm inviting you to engage maybe it's a daily workout, maybe it's a few times a week, from this place of this is my way of recharging myself. So there's, I think, a lot of the language that I hear in the kind of fitness world. There's, from instructors, from coaches, there's a lot of kind of negativity built into it, or like, a sense of dissatisfaction with who I am now,
Mm.
right? Like even stuff like, you know, summer bodies are built in the winter. You know, it's like
It's like negative right out of the gate. It's like, I don't want to work out hearing that.
right. Yeah, it's like that's not a big enough why to get, on the days that I do not feel like showing up, like that kind of negative reinforcement or that kind of small reason for working out, that's not a big enough why, right? But when we are coming at it from this place of this is actually where I experience great pleasure. Like
Mm.
I show up to this because the music is amazing. It takes me on a journey. I reconnect with my vision, with my purpose, with my voice, with my strength. Like, yeah, like that is a big enough why
Mm.
to get me to show up consistently. So that's the kind of different vision and voice of altar workouts and meditations. And I offer courses as well that are, topic focused. So there's Energize, which is a nutrition and metabolism reset. There's the Visionary Master Course, which is really all about spirited leadership. The last volume of that is called Spirited Leadership. And then I offer
Mm.
one-on-one work as well.
And then tell us about your podcast because I know that's very popular too.
Oh, so yeah, the Altar podcast is the mission statement, very simple, is exploring the practice of growth. So,
Hmm.
yes, a lot of the guests, or when I'll do solo episodes, are focused on elements of our wellness, right? So, nutrition, mindset, meditation, all of
Hmm.
these things, different kind of physical practices, right? Workouts, etc. But I also love, I'm always doing all of that to get into that deeper work of personal growth, of um, asking that question again of who am I becoming right now at this season of my life? What does my next chapter look like? So that's a lot of what we explore in Altar as well.
Mm, I love it. So, how can women be braver at work? Can you give me maybe 1 to 2 ways that women can be braver in their careers today?
Tomorrow, start your day but either before you walk into the doors of work or before you open that first Zoom or whatever it is, hand to your heart and
Mm.
just take a few breaths into your heart center and make a deal with yourself and with everyone that you're going to encounter that you're going to show up today from the heart. And
Mm.
sometimes that's going to look like, saying the brave thing that really feels true
Mm.
for you and you're a little nervous to say. Sometimes it's going to look like creating a boundary around yourself or around your time in some way from something that's really sucking your energy, right? But really connecting to that essence of yourself, because that's also about, I loved what you said to your friend, who's asking about why you have all these side gigs, that it's also about deciding how much energy that you're going to give to this work today. Like, and what you're
Hmm.
going to allow it to take from you and what you're not going to allow it to take from you. So I think just that very simple, and maybe especially, if there's like an especially challenging meeting or something that you're going to have during the course of the day, to just take that moment with yourself. That's also, I think, connected to the second thing, which is trusting the value of your voice and trusting your worth. And especially for women, we are so conditioned to compete. We're conditioned to, make ourselves small in all kinds of different ways.
Hmm.
And what would it look like for you to trust that you belong here, the value of your voice, the value of your perspective, and your literal worth, like your worth to be in this room, in this community? It's no small thing. I think that, HR departments at their best, like are really working from this perspective. It's no small thing for someone to give the percentage of our lives that we give to our work to a company. That is no small thing. This is your life. This is
Hmm.
your time. This is your one wild and precious life. And so to really be valuing yourself, that you belong here, that your voice is valuable to the conversations that you are in. And I think that when we're working from that place of our deep value, we show up differently. We show up courageously.
I actually really like that perspective. I mean, I think we take for granted that we're giving our, we are giving our life to this company. Like I haven't heard that or thought about it in a long time. So then that gives a whole new perspective for what you're giving to your career. I mean, it's not just your time. It's like your time equals the moments of your life that you could be doing anything. And I know we need to make money, and I'm not saying that, like, okay, fine, just like go live in a hut, on an island, although that sounds fabulous. I know that we have to do like real logical things, but thank you for kind of just reminding me that when we are working, we are giving, it's more than just our work output. It's our time, it's our energy, it's our spirit, it's our life force and our energy. And we get to decide how and when, and it's kind of disseminated, I guess, is what I'm thinking. So thank you for those. I just love them. I'm collecting them as an FYI. So I'm kind of like trying to like categorize all like 200 some episodes. I'm like, I've heard so much good wisdom over the last 3 to 4 years. So thank you for that. So how can women find you, the Alter podcast, Alter membership? Where do they find you and your work online?
Yes. Everything lives at NicoleMeline.com, NicoleMeline.com. If you go to the programs page there, you'll see courses. You'll also see a page about mentorship, one-on-one work. I have a couple of retreats that are coming up this summer, one in particular just outside of Aspen in July in Colorado, which is where I live, that I'm so excited to invite all of these spirited women into as just a total reset. So you can find out about retreats there as well. And one-on-one work, the podcast is on all podcast platforms, but of course on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and I'm on Instagram as well.
Well, thank you so much for being here. It was such a fun, it was just a joyful conversation, and I love the work you're doing and kind of bringing us a little out of the box, out of the traditional, out of the norm, so we can get back to our hearts. So thank you so much for being here.
Such an honor.
Well, that does it on my discussion with Nicole today. I hope you found our conversation both valuable and inspiring. As a reminder, please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast in Apple Podcasts and Spotify. The show is also available on any other podcast platform you enjoy. Until next time, show up, reinvent yourself, and be brave.